In 1274, the most powerful empire on Earth set its eyes on Japan. A fisherman on Tsushima's cliff saw the darkness first, a horizon swallowed by sails. The Mongol Empire had already consumed half the known world. 6 years earlier, Kublai Khan had sent Japan a letter, an ultimatum disguised as friendship. The message was clear: kneel or face what Rome, Baghdad, and Beijing had already faced. Cities that once glittered with the greatest civilizations on Earth, burned to ash by Mongol fire. Kublai Khan had decided Japan would be next. Japan's answer was to ignore him, and that silence cost them everything. Governor Sukekuni gathered 80 samurai and rode toward the beach anyway. What waited at the shore was not an army. It was the end of everything they had ever known. 80 samurai versus 30,000 Mongols. The math was already written in blood. The samurai were masters of the bow, and at first, they made the invaders bleed. But the Mongols didn't fight like any enemy Japan had ever faced. They moved in perfect formations, raining arrows in mass-synchronized volleys. Sukekuni fought until his sword broke, and the Mongol arrows finally found him. By midday, the beach of Tsushima belonged to the Mongols. Tsushima burned, and the screams of Iki Island came next. The Mongols wanted Japan broken in spirit before the main battle even began. They charged the mainland to the thunder of war drums and the crack of gongs. Then came a weapon Japan had never seen: exploding gunpowder bombs. Hooks ripped samurai from their horses, stripping away everything they were trained to do. The Mongols were lighter, faster, and carried personal shields, a deadly mismatch. But the samurai refused to break. Their counterattacks forced the Mongols to retreat and regroup. Then there was Takezaki Suenaga, a man who saw war as his ticket to glory. His follower begged him to wait, and Suenaga answered, "Charge." 3 arrows found him before he reached the enemy, and a 4th killed his horse. He lay on the ground, surrounded, waiting to die. Then reinforcements arrived, and Suenaga survived to fight another day. The Mongols burned the coast on their way out, just to make sure Japan felt the price of defiance. And then, they left. Japan had survived, but no one believed the Mongols were truly gone. New Mongol envoys came the following year, demanding submission one final time. Hojo Tokimune read the demand and made a decision that shocked the entire world. He had every Mongol envoy executed, a message written in blood, not ink. Then he built 12 miles of coastal walls, and Japan waited. Priests prayed, shrines chanted. The emperor himself called for divine protection. But Kublai Khan had not forgotten. He'd spent 7 years planning his revenge. In 1281, the largest invasion fleet the medieval world had ever seen set sail for Japan. Tsushima fell again. This time, there was no one left to defend it. The Mongols hunted fleeing children through the forests by the sound of their cries. But the walls held, and the Mongol fleet was trapped, circling like wolves without a door. The samurai took the fight to the Mongols, in small boats, in the dark, on the open sea. Kawano Michiari sailed toward the enemy fleet with 5 men, and did not slow down. 2 arrows in his body, and he still climbed the enemy ship and kept fighting. He captured a Mongol officer, the first Japanese naval victory of the campaign. Suenaga, still hungry for glory, forced his way onto boats and stormed ship after ship. Then the southern fleet arrived, and the invasion force tripled overnight. At Takashima Island, Japan was pushed back, and for the first time, defeat felt real. Then the sky changed. A typhoon hit the Mongol fleet with the force of 10 armies. Ships that had crossed half the Pacific were swallowed by the sea in hours. By morning, over half the Mongol fleet had ceased to exist. The bay that had once held the world's greatest armada now held only wreckage. Thousands of Mongol soldiers washed up on Japanese beaches, like debris from a broken dream. Among them was a southern Chinese soldier named Chang, 3 days stranded without food. The survivors tried to build boats from fallen trees. Desperate to escape, the Japanese found them and sorted them with cold precision. Mongols, Koreans, and northern Chinese were executed. Only the southern Chinese were spared. Chang would spend the rest of his life as a Japanese slave, but he left behind his words. Takezaki Suenaga returned home and presented his proof, his scars, and his enemy heads. He had his battles painted in the scrolls that survive to this day, the Moko Shurai Ekotoba. Kawano Michiari was honored as one of Japan's great defenders. Japan remained the only nation on Earth the Mongols never conquered. A single torii gate stood in the water, still standing where the fleet once anchored. The survivors carried that war inside them for the rest of their lives. Priests rebuilt what the fire had taken, stone by stone, prayer by prayer. The cracks in the armor, like the cracks in the nation, were carefully repaired. Every empire the Mongols touched fell, except this one. Even Tokimun, alone in his chamber that night, may have asked himself, why did we survive? The walls they had built still stood, and inside them, life returned. Tsushima, the first to fall, the first to suffer, was quiet again under mist and pine. A boy on the beach held a wooden sword and stared at the same horizon that had once brought death. Japan did not just survive, it remembered who it was and kept living. In Khanbalik, Kublai Khan received the news, and for once had no answer. Both invasions had failed, two of the greatest armadas in history, swallowed by fate and sea. Hakata Bay at sunset, the water that had turned black with fire and blood now glowed gold. The Japanese called it Kamikaze, the divine wind, and it became legend. Suenaga's scrolls still exist today, the oldest eyewitness record of this impossible story. Japan stood at dawn, scarred, exhausted, alive. The Mongols claimed the entire universe, so why couldn't they claim these islands? Leave your answer below.